Good morning and welcome to the Return Homestead. My name is Mike and my wife Marty and I homestead 6 acres in northeastern Kentucky. Today it's another stormy, rainy one. I think everybody in the country has really been feeling the pinch from all the rain we've been having lately. But we've got another issue that really has to be addressed and dealt with immediately. We got our water bill in this week and it's almost $100 more than what it should be. Really the only culprit it can be is this frost freeze. And there's only one way to know what needs to be fixed, and that's to dig it up. These are not the ideal conditions to be working in. This is really sloppy wet out here. It's been raining for the last several days, and that's of course all coming on the tail end of all that snow and ice. So a pair of rubber boots, absolute must for this kind of work. We're definitely going to get muddy and wet. Definitely want a good pair of gloves. It's something to keep the water and mud off of your hands. You get all of this slick clay on your hands and try to use a shovel, you're going to be in for a world of hurt. So we got gloves, we got boots, we got our hydrant. Now I just need to clear off a radius here that we can work in and decide whether or not I want to get a tarp on the ground. So let's get some of this stuff cleared out of the way. So this hose can wait till later. Toilet seat for a 5-gallon bucket. Not really sure where we picked that up along the way, but it's not something I wanted to get rid of. It's a good thing if you're out hunting, camping. Also good to have around the homestead, so we're going to hang on to that. And over the years of homesteading, I've learned to treat PVC pipe like lumber. You never let even small pieces of it go. You just never know when you're going to need it. So anything usually a foot or more, I'm going to hang on to. So this we brought with us from the other property. It just hasn't found a place in the barn yet. The 4x4 post sitting up against the barn has a specific use. It's used in harvesting the chickens. We just haven't had time to put it in the ground, and the ground's really been too soft down here. I want to do this somewhere near the faucet so I have access to water while we're harvesting. When we purchased the property, there was this really nice watering trough. It was already set up down here with the frost free. And of course we still need our watering buckets. Now that the freeze is gone, we'll be able to get back to using those. And these cinder blocks are just sitting here providing a platform. So we'll get those out of the way for the moment. And that's it, we're ready to start digging. It looks like there is a little bit of gravel here on the ground. I'm going to try to preserve all of that I can. And I do have some tarp sitting out here, so I probably am going to protect the grassy areas that I need to be able to walk in. Just remembering that this clay, once it gets wet, is just slippery as all get out. This tarp is an old billboard. It's not in perfect condition, but it could be useful in helping to get beds started. Used as a silage tarp. Block off the sun and keep the seeds from being able to germinate. So we'll be hanging on to that. And it is possible we could end up with a hole here and a major downpour at the same time. So we'll turn this tarp lengthwise. That way if I need to, I can just roll it up over the top of the hole and hopefully keep some of the water out. Now, at most, we're going to need to go down 2 feet. This particular type of frost-free hydrant could only be a foot deep, so I'll have to get down there and see if this is 1 or 2 feet down. And just do something to keep our tarp from blowing away. And then we're down to the shovel work. If you're wondering why I'm digging out so far away from the hydrant, I've done this stuff before. And I know that if I get down here and find a problem, there's going to be a section of PVC pipe that I'm going to need to find some deflection in if I'm going to put new connectors on it. And that's always the case when you do this type of work. I got fortunate on the last one we did at the other property, and I was able to put the new piece in with a little bit of patchwork. And because I was using the patchwork, I didn't have to dig quite such a big hole. I just don't know what I'm walking into here. I won't know till I get down about a foot or so. Wow, this clay is definitely sticky. It's really difficult to dig in it when you can't get it to come off your shovel. So digging gets really complicated. Hate to say it, but I'm actually kind of hopeful that I find something seriously wrong here and that there's an obvious leak. I'm still waiting to see water come gushing out at some point. So we had a water bill is about 3 times what it should be, at least 3 times, almost 4. And that doesn't make any sense unless there's a rupture in the line somewhere. The only place we have had any issues has been on this frost free. Let me show you what's been happening with it. So this is one of Woodford's X34 models, and you can see where this arm has broken off here, and it's just sheared right off on both sides, and that's where it grabs a hold of the piston and opens the valve down below. So there is nothing now holding the piston and the handle together. So I've been looking for the proper repair kit for this one. It's really difficult to find, by the way. So keep that in mind if you're looking at frost-free hydrants. Finding a repair kit for the X34 is not as easy nor as inexpensive as the Y34 models. Now, the Y34s have been around a little bit longer, and I was able to get a repair kit for one of those for about $15. The only repair kit I've seen so far for the X series is about $80, and it has fewer parts in it. So keep that in mind, folks, if you're looking to buy one of these frost frees. This is probably what you'll end up with, is going to be an X34, especially if you buy it from a local vendor. This is typically what you'll find in any of the big box stores. It looks like this one's seen a few winters and summers out here on the homestead. So that's how we knew we had a problem, and that's the only place on our water supply lines where we've had an issue, is right here. And it sheared off one very cold morning when I was trying to open up to water the chickens. And so I'm thinking it froze somewhere down the length of this standpipe. So what typically happens is you open it up, water fills the pipe up and comes out of the faucet. When you close the handle, it pushes the piston back down and closes the valve down below, and without pressure that valve then drains underground so that this standpipe remains clear of water. So even in the wintertime you can get water out of it without splitting the pipe. What I'm thinking is the water didn't drain out correctly, and I'm thinking somewhere right here just below the sod level. So I'm going to keep digging here and see if we can find that split. It is raining, but only lightly. So for right now I'm just going to keep digging. Now I'm starting to see water in the bottom of the hole, which, yes, it's a rainy day, but I should be getting water in the bottom of the hole. It's not raining that much. Also got to be careful digging down this deep. I don't know where the water line comes up to the bottom of the standpipe. Now, so at any moment I could encounter the water line, and I don't want to encounter that with an aggressive shovel strike. You can see that water starting to fill up down there. It's not raining that hard, guys. Just a little light drizzle. So that's going to be where the problem is. It is leaking. I just got to get all the way down to the bottom and figure out what we need to do to get it fixed. Probably replace this entire hydrant setup. I did notice that these arms on this piece are not metal. I don't know what they're made out of, some sort of a composite material. Feels like it could be a plastic, and that would explain why it's sheared off down here. This should be stainless steel or brass, and that's definitely not either of those two.
You might know better.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you knew or where they live, who owns the property back over here. No?
No. This property up here on the hill?
Yeah, and then all back down that way.
And all back down that way. I do not. Tony would probably know. Hang on, let me see if I can get him on the phone. Let me see if I can get him on the phone. You might find him out at the farm. I think I just saw him drive by. Sorry for the interruption. We had somebody coming by. He claims to be a contractor for the electric utility, taking an inventory of what's on top of the poles, like they don't know. I'm not sure what they're up to. I've been polite to them when they came out and looked at my property and looked at the poles here. But now they're asking me about neighbor's property. That makes me a little more nervous and concerned. See, the electric utility should know who owns the properties that their poles are set up on. All right, so back to digging. Started to give me cause for concern. So as I'm digging down next to the standpipe, I'm starting to encounter rust down here. And rust is never good in a water hydrant. So that's a really bad sign there. But this doesn't appear. I know this says Woodford on it, right there on the spout. But this does not appear to be of the right quality for a company of their reputation. And I haven't looked into it yet. Y'all have to look into it for me. Tell me what you find out. Does Woodford manufacture their products here in the United States, or are they importing all this stuff from China? I have my suspicions. Now that I'm down this far, I'm almost certain I'm gonna have to replace this hydrant. Which is good in some ways. The last one I replaced at the other property, the standpipe cracked because it was full of water. But the valve and the handle body, everything was fine on it. There was no rust on it at that point, but it had a big split going up the back of it. I'm seeing a split here, but I do still see quite a bit of rust down at the bottom. At some point, it's going to get too deep for you to be able to lift big hawks of clay up out of the bottom of the hole. especially wet clay like this. We do apparently have a leak down here. There's a lot of water in the hole now, and it seems to be continuing to flow in. And we still got a ways to go to get down to the actual bottom of this standpipe. So the only option now is to get down in the hole and start digging. I did find that they put a sump around this, so that's good. There's at least a plastic bucket that was supposed to provide a sump hole for the water to drain into. I don't yet know how effective that was. I've just gotten to the top of the bucket, so, and we're already about 2 feet down, so this thing is way down in the ground. So that's good. I really doubt the frost line goes down this far in this area. Maybe if we were in Alaska, I'm gonna have to put it back down this far because that's where the water lines are. But before I can even get to installing a new one, I had to get to the bottom of the old one. You may be wondering, how do you dig and stuff like this that deep with just a shovel? One shovel full at a time. Trying not to get in a hurry. I definitely don't want to get a hernia trying to dig this thing out. This wet clay can get pretty heavy. If you'll just stay at it and keep digging, just dedicate yourself to getting to the bottom. One shovelful at a time, you'll get there. Get to the point now where pulling these hocks up is actually easier to do by hand than to use a shovel. Yeah, that's going to get messy, but they'll come out. A hard time getting them cut loose now. This clay is thick and wet. The wetter it gets, the harder it is to break a hawk loose. It just wants to hold together. I know it may not look like it, but y'all, this is actually kind of fun. Well, I'm digging the gravel out of the bucket. There's still a little ways to go before I actually find the water line that comes into this standpipe. There is a lot of very thick wet clay down here in the bottom. It's going to take several hours to dig this out. It may take a day or two to get this all dug out and get everything figured out and see where this leak is. Hopefully the leak is here. If the leak's not here, then we're left troubleshooting everything between here and the street. This is the lowest point on the water system and should be the last fixture, unless there's more pipe that goes under here we don't know about yet. There's no more fixtures out there in the field, so we still got a ways to go and a little bit of investigation to do. But until I get down there and find the water pipe coming into this standpipe, there's really no way to know what's going on. And now it's time for a little bit of an update. Obviously y'all can tell it's a lot brighter out here. This is a completely different day. Everything has changed quite a bit since we left off digging this hole over here. Let me show you what's been going on, but before I do, let me remind you of something I said just a little while ago. Yes, hopefully the leak is here. If the leak's not here, then we're left troubleshooting everything between here and the street. So here's where we're at with the hole. It's filled back in. This did take a couple of days. It was a lot harder to get the dirt back in the hole than it was to take it out. You can see my 4x4 back there. That's been my tamping rod. So that's how I've compacted this clay back into the hole it came out of. And we still have to fix the handle. I did find the parts at a reasonable price, of all places, at Home Depot. So the kit to repair this at Home Depot was just $20. If you try to buy it on Amazon, it's $70. So definitely want to buy that one at Home Depot. And it is metal, not plastic, so we won't have a problem with that arm shearing off again. So we got everything buried back in the ground. Let's talk a little bit about what we discovered as we continued to investigate. Remember, I had water down in this hole, and I was sure that I had a leak here. But let's take a look at what happens all the way up at the road, at the top of the hill, where the water comes onto the property. So up at the road is where the water comes onto the property. Now the water district tells me that this is normal. But y'all tell me what you think. When I look in here and I see that my meter box is completely full of water. So when I got down to the bottom of that standpipe, what I noticed was that I had a lot of clay in the water. So I had all of this thick clay that was mixed into the water, so it had kind of a chocolate milk consistency to it. And if I just sat and stared at the water, just watched the water, it just sort of sat there, it settled. If there was any kind of a leak, as clean water came in, there should be little swirls of cloudiness, and you'd be able to see where the clean water was coming in. I didn't see any of that when I got down to the bottom of the hole. There was water down there, but it was all mixed with clay. Now it turns out that all of this clay soil up here on top of the ridge tends to hold on to water, and it moves and creeps very slowly downhill. And so even though my water box is at a high point on the ridge, and therefore water should run away from it in both directions, my water box is still full of water. This meter box shouldn't have water standing in it, but according to the water company, that's pretty common around here just because of the soil conditions. Well, that meant that it was also common for me to have water in the bottom of a hole I just dug, especially about 3 feet deep. So I left it alone and came back to it the next morning, and sure enough, there was enough water standing in that hole that I had to bail it out before I could start putting the clay back in. I had decided at that point that that wasn't leaking, and it was a question then of exactly where is this leak that's costing us so much money in excess water. Let me show you what I discovered. Since I was becoming convinced that I didn't have a problem with the frost-free down by the barn, I started looking at these frost-frees. I have 2 of them on the house, and the valve for these is well up inside of the wall. That keeps them from freezing in the wintertime, but they are external faucets. I thought maybe one of these guys was leaking after the thaw had happened, but they're both tight. There's no water leaking out of either one of these, so they weren't the culprit. That meant the leak had to be on one of the appliances inside of the house. We already knew we didn't have any leaks on toilets or showers or sinks. That left really only one appliance, and that was our hot water heater. And we discovered this was where the problem was. This is where the actual leak was. Now this is the pressure and temperature relief valve for the hot water heater. Now ours happens to be plumbed so that if it opens up and releases any pressure or water, it will run down into the drain and out of the house, so you'd never see it, you wouldn't know it. And although the valve itself was closed, as it should be, and the valve was hot, but we also noticed that this pipe was hot. meaning that it had hot water flowing in it and had hot water flowing in it for some time. So this is where the leak was, and the reason it was leaking was not because of temperature. And I discovered that by turning the power off. When I turned the power off to the hot water heater, that meant the heating elements went off. And so after a couple of hours, it will have cooled down. Plus, we took some of the hot water out to make it cool down even faster. That way, if this valve is being actuated by an over temperature, meaning it's over 200 degrees inside of the tank and the tank is trying to relieve pressure, we would eliminate that as a possibility. So it wouldn't be temperature that would open this valve. There's two ways that this valve can open on its own, either because the temperature gets over 200 degrees or the pressure inside of the tank exceeds its rated pressure. Now the valve does have a tag on it. It will tell you exactly what temperature and pressure it's set to. But the point was, once I got the temperature out of the equation and only pressure could be causing that valve to open up, it was still open. We still had water flowing through this valve and I could not get it to shut. So that made me very suspicious. We had the water company come out. They took a look in the box initially, said everything's fine, but yes, we do see a slow leak. Then we came in here and investigated our hot water heater and were able to determine that it was pressure that was causing it to leak. We had them come back out and they were going to test the pressure on the house this time. And when they put a pressure gauge on the house, it went through the roof immediately, indicating they were sending way too much water pressure into our home. The technician went back out to the box, discovered that the pressure control valve that they put inside of the meter box to reduce that pressure had failed, probably because it's sitting underneath water all the time. So that had to be replaced. Once they replaced that and got the pressure back down to a manageable level, this valve is now able to stay sealed and the leak goes away. Problem solved. Well, almost problem solved. We still had a big hole out here next to the frost-free hydrant. So that's meant a couple of days out here of picking this clay up by hand. It was too heavy to get it with a shovel. Once you got a bunch of clay on the shovel, it wouldn't come off and drop back in the hole. So I ended up on my hands and knees picking up the clay one big handful at a time, throwing it back in the hole, and then tamping it all back in. And that did take 3 days to get the hole filled back in all the way. We were dodging storms and rain at the same time, so it didn't go exactly according to plan, but we got it all filled back up. So we still have a broken handle here on the frost free. I've got the parts on order. They should be here in a couple of days, and I'll put a video together showing you guys how to repair this thing. Doesn't look like it's going to be a very difficult repair, but this is homesteading, so we'll make a video about that. Marty's also got a video that she put together to show you guys the progress on all of the plant starts that she got going inside. So we'll show you that in the next day or so. And the rest of the day today, we're going to be doing some building. We need to get some planter boxes put together. And we'll put a video together about how we're building those planter boxes. We also need to find some bed material, so some good mulch, some manure that has been composted down and is ready to go into a raised bed. Although we're out here in Amish country, we haven't found that yet. We'll talk a little bit about that while we're putting these beds together. But we do appreciate you joining us on the Return Homestead today. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please go ahead and do that. And while you've got that window open, hit the thumbs up icon. That's supposed to let the algorithm know you enjoyed the video so they can share it out with more people. And we'll see you next time.